Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the horror adventure Weeping Walls, designed by Leonardo Andrade for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. I have reviewed a number of horror modules. I think horror is an excellent genre for playing D&D and especially works really well for one-shots because it usually has a very nicely self-contained story and you can kind of jack with the players a little bit more if they're just running one-shot characters or if you just need a separate thing other than what you're doing in your campaign. And we've played several horror one-shots, so I've got quite a bit of experience with horror adventures. This one, I think, is up there among some of my favorite horror adventures. It has some... it's not my favorite, and it has a few issues with its narrative design, but overall, I liked it. And this one, more than maybe a lot, is very clearly inspired by existing horror, specifically Japanese horror and just modern ghost stories. I wrote down the specific references that I recognized, which was The Grudge, The Ring, Mama, which was a movie from a couple years ago, and including the that famous playable trailer. Who did it? It's a video game called PT, and all of these elements are here with basically this vengeful ghost haunting this manor, and it's just got a whole bunch of good checklists of horror tropes and things to find. Now, the narrative story, I think, works pretty well. The adventure background. My biggest problem is the players don't really necessarily learn about what they have to do to break the curse. So we've got a couple adventure hooks, which is good. They can be basically part of the family. By the way, it's a level 4 adventure, which is a little bit higher than most of these horror adventures tend to be. And it takes place primarily at this manor belonging to this rich family, which is where a lot of these horror stories like to play out. At the beginning, this patriarch has died, committed suicide, which there are several content warnings here listed at the beginning: domestic violence, suicide, and body horror. Lots of body horror. And it turns out he was actually the heir to this other rich family, which had been cursed, and the family had, something terrible happened. They all died. It was a big tragedy. Everybody thinks the manor's cursed. Nobody goes over there. All the kind of classic checkbox storytelling. And then the players are hired to basically go check it out and see what's going on there. And there's multiple adventure hooks. You can either be maybe one of the family members, or you could be, indebted to them, or maybe you're hired by the local church to go and try to, get rid of the evil undead presence or whatever. All those work, and that's fine. As a background story, the reason the curse exists is that this woman who claimed she's got a baby with her, she shows up at the manor and claims that the father of the family, the patriarch, has fathered that baby, basically had a bastard son with her. He turns her away, and then she goes through really hard times and then tries to come back, and they still turn her away, and then the baby eventually dies, and then she's so upset that she comes back and bribes, steals and whatever, gets all this money, bribes a guard, comes in and throws herself into the well in the basement. Why do you have a well in the basement? I don't know. That's fucking creepy as shit anyway. You're just asking for horror at that point. And that starts the curse. And the designer literally calls like the Grudge curse too. And then what she does and just infects the entire house. They all become like kind of twisted and evil and just full of rage and just committing horrible acts against each other, and eventually they all start murdering each other, including like the guards and the servants, and everything just kind of goes just really nasty. And then at some point, another adventuring party shows up, and there's a whole backstory there, which I like. That trope also. That was part of the Secrets of the Blind Palace, which I ran as a another horror adventure, which I like that, you find, I like anytime you find like the remains of the former adventuring party. I think that really sets the stage very well for environmental storytelling. And there's a really cool scene where you can discover, how they basically died through this whole process. That is all a cool setup. The issue is the only way to actually break this curse is to recover the bodies of the people who died in the house, which is a lot of people. I think maybe it's just, let's see, what does it say? The curse can be broken by taking all the remains of the dead, which is the ghost, the baby, the 3 family members, and then the 4 adventurers. That's a lot of fucking bodies. You have to take them all out of the manor and give them a proper burial in hollowed ground, is what it says. Or I think they end up burning them like in the village or something. I don't know where, I read the entire adventure, and I don't know where the players are supposed to learn that information. They may just think they have to fight like the ghost lady as the big boss or something, which is, typically how D&D would run, and that is an option. But there needs to be some way of conveying that information, and the only way the players really the DM really has is through this one really interesting encounter through an NPC that, frankly, most players would just stand away from and fucking throw fireballs at because it's creepy as hell. By the way, if you reacted like I did when you first got to this page where it shows this like grid map, you're like, oh no, Eric's gonna hate this because it's got this horrible black and white graph paper style. That's not gonna work. That's actually not the map style. I think this is just showing the relative spacing between the stables, the guardhouse, and what the manor looks like on the outside. But the actual maps are freaking awesome. They got full color detail maps, I believe made in, it says in the credits somewhere, made through Dungeon Draft. So, and it looks really good. We get these maps for the first floor, the second floor, and the basement. And I believe the guardhouse also, and maybe the stables all have maps. It's in a separate zip file, but we get the DM versions are here embedded in the PDF, and then the actual maps without any of the annotations on there, the player maps, are in the separate zip file for you to actually use, and that's awesome. That is a huge thumbs up for giving me awesome maps. So when you first make it to the manor, you can probably explore the stables or the guardhouse first. You will find the oldest son, which turns out to be the one who died in the beginning, who committed suicide, who had the attachments here. So he did actually escape this area. He murders his sister because he's trying to flee out of a fit of rage. They're all just screaming at each other. It's a whole bunch of just people being angry at each other and just killing each other out of rage. Basically, that happens kind of in all these scenes. And it does the cool horror story thing, which is used a lot in D&D effectively, is when you walk into a room, like you see literally like the shadowed versions of all these scenes just play out. Video games do this all the time, and I think it works really well. And that's just good environmental storytelling, other than using, the classic like a diary where they write down all their, what just happened. I don't think we actually have any diaries here, but instead we have all these ghost scenes of literally shadow people like performing all these acts, and it just repeats because this whole manor is just kind of locked in to this one sequence, and these souls are being tormented continuously. So there's, some items you can find. There's one bit where if you have the dagger that killed the sister, then that dagger can like lead you to other, grisly scenes, and the sister's ghost could possess one of the players, and that could be an interesting story hook. Once you make it to the manor, into the chapel area, there's the one person who isn't a ghost, is I don't know why the manor has its own in-house chapel that's just like pretty good size, but the chaplain, I guess, or priest, was somehow turned into this big like the Thing type fleshy amalgamation creature. It uses the stat block of a Nothic, which is important because it can do all the cool Nothic stuff of like figuring out what the player's memories are and then trying to consume memories and do all its like weird insight and stuff. But if you look at the map here, it is a really creepy, like you can see the door open, there's this blood everywhere, and this whole room is supposed to be this pulsing organism that's alive and just growing. I'm really picturing like the Thing of just this fleshy mass, and that's supposed to be the information NPC that the players talk to. Like, I imagine most parties are going to say, fuck that, and just start attacking it from afar, which it has no hit points. It has a stat block, but it is literally designed to be immortal because it instantly heals any wound. So maybe after, a time, especially if it's talking to the players, they'll figure out, oh, this is actually a social encounter and not a combat encounter. Maybe you can get away with that. But it's still a interesting bargain because while the while that immortal Nothic flesh creature knows the information, including I think it would divulge how to cure the curse, because it's one thing it wants to do is to consume memories. So it will, but it can only consume memories from a willing participant. So it's an interesting bargaining thing where it will constantly like beg the players, let me, steal your, thoughts or whatever, and then maybe it'll give you information. But there's nothing explicitly about like would it. And if you solve the whole, if you take the bodies and remove the curse, then he is destroyed along with the rest of the curse houses. So it just kind of lacks a good way for the players to kind of figure out how to actually solve this problem through the environment, and that's the only one avenue it has is through this really. It's a cool encounter, but I think you're locking your players too much, and I don't think they would realize like, oh well, clearly to break this curse we have to recover all of the bodies, and there's a lot of bodies you have to recover too. It's very easy to miss them, although they're all directly on the map, but the body thing is cool because it's designed to have the players explore. So you're encouraging the players to explore all these different areas and not just fight the boss in the well, which is definitely a boss fight, because you need to recover her body and her baby's body, which is the bottom of the well, and that's a whole thing. So while you're trying to get to the bottom of the well and recover it, she's constantly attacking you, and she's like a CR6, kind of a cross between like a banshee and a ghost, has all these different, horrifying visage and touch powers and all these things. And of course, one big thing about this adventure is that, she's called the Weeper, will absolutely harass and attack the players throughout the adventure. There's very little art. In fact, there's only one art piece in this entire product, which is a bummer because the maps are so good. But the one piece of art is really, really good. It's extremely creepy. It's exactly what I was picturing, which was those ghost, like the Japanese horror with and it's usually always like a female ghost that's all kind of really just creepy and animated, horrifying, and the limbs are bent and all that. Or coming down a hallway at you or something, or just being behind you. Somebody did that cool video where they showed in PT, which I never play because I cannot do creepy video games at all. Where they showed the fact that because you constantly hear her like as if she's behind you, they like hacked the game to unlock it so you could swing the camera around, and sure enough, this fucking ghost lady's like wandering behind you as you're in first person mode, and when you turn around, she disappears. It creeps me out just thinking about it. So it's a really, really cool piece of art, but it's the only artwork in here. But that's what I'm picturing is this woman, this ghost, just constantly attacks the players. She's doing all these cool attacks where she can go through the walls and just come up and, hug people and do a creepy like paralyzation effect, or do her horrifying visage where I kind of picture the Ghostbusters thing at that point where they just look and this horrible face appears. There's a really cool scene where they walk into an open door of a pantry, and as soon as somebody walks in, the pantry slams shut, and she just pops out and attacks the player really quick and then disappears. Like, that's just a cool jump scare moment that you can build in. There's a lot of really neat scenes throughout this adventure, and then you will also see those scenes of the family gradually like attacking each other. There's a scene where the wife is really mad at the husband, and she's drinking and he's drinking and just yelling at him for the infidelity and all that, and eventually he just throws her against like a chair and she breaks her neck, and then she becomes this creepy ghost. Unfortunately, it uses kind of the same minion ghost stat block for all the ghosts, so it doesn't quite do a fun like unique. It's not like every ghost is its own unique thing and they're haunting their one area where they died or anything. Instead, they all become kind of a generic what is it called, grudge specter, which is kind of just a depowered version of the like a ghost basically. Although they all have they're all capable of possession, interestingly enough. But that was a little disappointing because you literally just fight kind of the same stat block throughout the entire adventure, and then you just have the one Weeper ghost that kind of constantly harasses the players. But exploration-wise, I mean, Haunted House adventures do such a good fucking job of checking that exploration checkbox because everything reinforces how creepy it is. You can constantly harass the players with not even entering combat mode, just have her appear, do a thing, and then have her disappear would be really great at just upsetting your players every time they open a door, go into a room, or just walk through a hallway. That always works really well. And then they'll find out as you learn more of these scenes, kind of the rage and anger that befell this family, and maybe hints of what happened. But even then, I don't know if you... the best story scene that you get in terms of learning what the fuck happened here and why this is such a haunted house is when you enter... Let's see if I have a good map. Okay, it's really tiny in here, but there's the guest bedroom, which is full of bodies, and when you enter this room, that's when a scene plays out that has the 4 adventurers, which unfortunately all died kind of together. I think it would have been more effective to spread that out and had more of those scenes. Instead, you just get kind of one really. There's scenes of the family throughout the house in like 3 different areas, or maybe 4, but then there's like one scene of the adventurers. One of them is like jumping out of a window and trying to rappel down, and he ends up, the rope gets cut and he falls down to his death. One of them is just being burned and never explains how that happened. He's on the bed. And then the 2 remaining are kind of imploring with the ghost lady, and they're the ones that are saying things like, let's see, what does the dialogue go? It says, we can help you find your peace. We can help you find peace, you and your child. The people who hurt you are dead already. You got your vengeance. And they're trying to say, no, it's okay. And that's a good story scene, but I don't know if it's enough to explain to the players that, if anything, it explains to the players like, yeah, why are you still doing this? Because you clearly killed everybody here, and you're just continually to haunt them. It's like, how do we solve this problem, basically? And I just don't think the narrative does a good job of explaining the fact. There needs to be like a diary or something by maybe one of the adventurers you find that's like, hey, maybe finding the bodies and removing the bodies from this house and burning them or burying them will solve this, to give some idea to the players, because otherwise I don't think they know enough information to actually solve this problem. But it's a cool scene, and they've got some magic items on there too, all custom magic items, which is nice for kind of good balance for tier 1. A big combat fight, of course, occurs as soon as you try to touch the bodies. Those grudge specters come up and fight. But the whole idea is that you just need to go around collecting all these bodies, and then the actual boss fight will be the basement. One thing this adventure should have done is it should have put all the Weeper stuff that you could do at the beginning rather than when it talks about the basement, because yes, the basement is where she can do her layer actions, and there's a cool scene where once you even try to go into the basement, she will attack you, and that's supposed to tell the players, not necessarily like you can't go down there. It is locked, and you'll find the key in another location, which is a classic thing, but it doesn't prevent somebody from trying to do a rogue from using pick locks to get down there, because it doesn't break the story if you actually fight her early on, although it would make the dungeon a lot easier if you actually do take her out pretty early, because then she can't harass you. Although I think she can reform later. I don't know what the timing of that is. But she's got all these layer actions. She can attack the players as they try to get down there. But more importantly, obviously, she can harass the players during the manor, as I've been saying. But all this information is saved for, page 12 when it actually talks about the basement. Instead, that should have been at the beginning, because you can just harass your players with her throughout the adventure. Granted, you probably want to do it after a few rooms, get them a little settled. You don't typically have, introduce your big ghost like right off the bat in one of these ghost stories. It's usually a little bit later, and then you get the momentum going and do that more and more. So hopefully that works out. I think generally it's a pretty good thumbs up. I mean, it's got a lot of fun new material here, including the magic items, a custom madness table for when your players are attacked by the Weeper, or if you're just feeling like they're, frantically, their mind is breaking from all these things happening. You could have them roll on that. And there's good stuff on here too. One of them is you can't act on your own volition. You need somebody else to help you. And the other one is you only act in ways that help you and doesn't benefit other people. So in other words, if somebody else needed healing, you would not heal them, but you would only heal yourself. The nice thing, and normally I would bulk at that, but all these things only last for minutes. So basically during combat and not necessarily for like the whole adventure or something. So I think that's a little better balanced. I like the new stat blocks. I think work well, although I wish we would have had a little more variety in the enemies rather than just the same Grudge Spectre. Let's go over my pros and cons for Weeping Walls. Pros: multiple adventure hooks to draw the party to the manor. Although we don't have a prologue, which I will get to that in the cons, but I appreciate that we've got multiple avenues for bringing them there. Pro: the immortal fleshy Nothic room is an excellent and creepy NPC. That really threw me off guard, especially because, like I said, every other enemy here is just a ghost. And that one is special because not only is it incredibly creepy and interesting, but it is a social encounter, and this adventure would otherwise sorely be lacking in that. So that becomes kind of the focal point of a lot of information the players can get. Hopefully they're willing to play ball with it. Hard to say. Pro: tips for utilizing the Weeper to harass and scare the PCs throughout the manor. That is the key to a lot of good horror dungeon crawls, is have something continuously happening to the PCs that's not necessarily like, constant combat encounters, but good environmental effects, or in this case, just this monster constantly attacking the players throughout. And I think it's pretty effective. All the different ways, literally, it's just a bunch of bullet points, half a dozen bullet points that you can do if PCs are alone, or if they're, you can attack the last one or do something cool that is very effective. Pro custom madness table, magic items, and monsters. Lots of new content, which is always good to see, especially for such a relatively tiny mini adventure. And pro full color detailed battle maps. Huzzah! Don't get that too often, especially in the small adventures, and these are really, really nice, lovely battle maps that I would absolutely use if I was running this adventure. Cons, it lacks a prologue, and it literally says just have them already riding to the manor, which is fine, but it doesn't give you enough information. There's no accompanying NPC. There's nothing there about what's going. Give them a proper, like, we have the adventure hooks, but you still need some kind of more information, I feel like, about what's going on here. And yes, there's environmental storytelling, but part of the problem, and this is in the same con I wrote down, is that the PCs just don't really learn what they have to do throughout the manor regarding the gathering of the corpses and getting that out of there. You don't have to know the information at the beginning, but at some point the players need to learn that information, that, okay, to solve this curse, we have to be recovering these bodies. And hopefully they learn it sooner rather than later, so they don't have to go back through and like, oh shit, we should have grabbed, those 3 bodies we already just saw earlier in this adventure. You don't necessarily have to run this as a one-shot, but I keep thinking these horror modules work really well as one-shots, and that would suck to have to backtrack, especially in a horror module, because there's shit going on all the time. Pro, I do wish there was some more variety in the enemies, mainly because there's a good opportunity to use different kinds of, ghosts and situations with people who died differently. Instead, it just kind of relies on that same Grudge Spectre for all the minions, except for the actual boss, a Vengeful Ghost Weeper Lady. And then con, I was really torn about using this as a con because I do really like this one piece of art, but it's the only piece of art in this entire adventure. It's just that one. It's really good. It's really good, but we only have one piece of art, and that's just, you could have put some more things on here. Just, again, if you want to use just stock art that's kind of horror themed or something just to add on there, I think would have gone a really long way to making this product shine even brighter, or darker, I guess, because it's horror. Final verdict, effectively inspired by Japanese horror and modern ghost stories, Weeping Walls drops players into a creepy manor haunted by a vengeful ghost. Thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. And you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Manuel, Wizard, Princess, Christopher, Star Lovely, Thomas, Ian, Captain Mike, Adam, Goblin Works, and Aiden. And gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Numa, Marcos, Dade, Vicente, Gilberto, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam Ross, Limpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy 619, Scalene, Nick, Farty McButterpants, Blood Angel, Veronis, The Fireworks Factory, Baboon, Sean, A.K. Cert2B, Nathan, and Fast Like a Tortoise. Thank you all very much for your support.